Joining me now, NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez, who is in Tel Aviv for us, and NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. So, Raf, NBC News located each of the destroyed aid vehicles. I saw your reports all morning. What did they find?
Yeah, Andrea, so we mapped out the locations of each of these three destroyed aid vehicles that you have been seeing the twisted wreckage of over the last 48 hours or so. Our unbelievably brave colleagues from our Gaza crew going physically to the spots where those 7 aid workers were killed, sending us back the location, sending us back the footage. And just to be really clear, it is not like these 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers were caught in some kind of crossfire and that they were hit accidentally as Israel was targeting Hamas. Each of these vehicles was hit individually by what appears to be a very precise Israeli airstrike. Now, we heard from the chief of staff of the Israeli military. He is saying what happened here was a misidentification, that the Israeli military mistook these humanitarian vehicles for some kind of threat. He said that happened at night and that it happens in a complex war environment. What he has not addressed, the Israeli military has not addressed so far, is this question of how is it that the World Central Kitchen coordinated the movement of these vehicles ahead of time, which the aid organization says it did, and yet the Israeli military still opened fire. It's worth noting also, they were driving on this coastal road along the Mediterranean, and this is a road that is deconflicted. It is a road that is supposed to be safe for humanitarian workers. So we have this initial statement from the head of the Israeli military. He says there is going to be a swift and transparent investigation. Israel will publish the findings of that investigation. But right now, there are still a lot of questions coming from the White House, coming from World Central Kitchen, and coming from the families of these 7 killed aid workers. I will say, Andrea, the bodies have just in the last hour or so crossed over from Gaza into Egypt, the beginning of their long journey home. Andrea.
And you also, Raf, had been reporting about another incident that happened just 2 days before this strike. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. So World Central Kitchen tells us that 2 days before the deadly airstrike, they believe an Israeli sniper opened fire on one of their vehicles. This happened in southern Gaza in the Han Yunis area. Nobody was injured in this incident, a bullet apparently striking one of the wing mirrors. But clearly, this raised alarm in real time over the weekend, and World Central Kitchen says it filed a complaint with the Israeli military. Now, we asked the IDF about this incident. We didn't hear back, but assuming that it is true, it really raises questions about the safety of humanitarian organizations, and it may be an indication that what happened on Monday with such catastrophic loss of life was not an isolated incident, that it may have been just a matter of time. The UN says what happened was not an isolated incident by any standards, and they point out that around 200 aid workers, the vast majority of them Palestinians, have been killed in Gaza since the start of the war. That just absolutely shatters numbers from previous conflicts. And it's the sad case that a lot of those Palestinian aid workers, their deaths not getting the same level of attention as these international aid workers. But it underscores that Gaza has been an unbelievably dangerous situation for humanitarians, for people who've been trying to help for a long time now. Andrea?
Indeed. And I know Israel has very strong views about the UNRWA, the UN workers. That aside, they've been investigating them and making charges against them, and it is controversial. The rest of the world does not agree with that. But no one has ever questioned the independence and the lack of any kind of political views from World Central Kitchen. They've worked all over the world for many, many years. We know Jose Andres from when he first founded it, and it just has never been the case. Mike, we know that the president has been speaking on health care right now with Bernie Sanders and some others at the White House, but we want to continue on this subject because of its importance. We'll bring it to you if he begins to talk about this, of course. Mike, we heard the strongest language yet when the president said that he was outraged. and that Israel has not done enough to protect aid workers and civilians. Where does the U.S. go from here?
Well, Andrea, we've been closely measuring the degrees of daylight between the Biden administration and the Israeli government, the Netanyahu government specifically, since October. We remember, of course, that hug in Tel Aviv when the president came quickly to visit Israel after October 7th. He continues to express the U.S.'s strong support for Israel. Just last week, in fact, at that fundraiser with the three presidents, he said, talked about the hostages who have been not killed, he said massacred. So clearly the support remains there. But the daylight has been growing over time, and the question now is, does this represent a potential breaking point? The president does have a close personal and, yes, even political relationship with Jose Andres. That statement that was released last night came after a one-on-one conversation between the president and Andres. That statement also going on to say that this is not an isolated incident. We know that virtual meeting that happened between National Security Team at the White House and their Israeli counterparts to discuss the Rafah invasion, the potential ground invasion that the U.S. has been so strongly warning against and seeking alternatives for. The politics, of course, are also inseparable here, Andrea, and we have two fresh reminders of the political toll on the administration at this point. One, last night, the president holding a private meeting with a number of Muslim leaders. Our reporting includes the fact that one of those, a Palestinian man, left very shortly after beginning that meeting because he said there are not other Palestinians represented here. There was also, we should mention, primary elections last night across the country, where once again we saw in two states, Connecticut and Rhode Island, the uncommitted vote in double-digit percentage points. In Wisconsin as well, 8% of the vote going to an uncommitted. That was a point where some of those who had been leading this in other states had focused their efforts, and so the White House keeping close tabs on this as well, Andrea.
And there's a political fallout, of course, also for Prime Minister Netanyahu. Raf, we saw the Israeli police clashing with protesters. I can't recall them getting that close to Netanyahu's home. And it was a big protest last night.
Yeah, Andrea, this was really striking. Over the last couple of days, we have seen the largest protests in this country since October 7th. You'll remember 2023, up until the Hamas terror attack, was a year of mass protests all over Israel, people demonstrating against Prime Minister Netanyahu's plans to weaken the Israeli Supreme Court. Now they are demonstrating, calling for early elections, and they are calling for a ceasefire deal to release the hostages. Now, the Israeli police say this demonstration in Jerusalem near Netanyahu's residence turned into a riot. They used pretty serious tactics, charging police horses into the crowd at one point, firing water cannons. But it goes to show the real political heat in this country right now. Netanyahu is a master of withstanding pressure, both internationally from the United States, from the UN, from other parts of the international community, but also domestically. He does have a majority in parliament. It's a majority that includes the Israeli far right. It includes a number of centrist lawmakers who joined his government on an emergency basis after the start of the war. So there is nothing that means Netanyahu has to go to elections anytime soon, but a majority of this country, according to polls, wants that to happen. Andrea?
And I wanted, before I let you go, Raf, I also wanted to play a little bit of Richard Engel interviewing one of the seven. I think she's an Israeli woman who we had seen in a number of other places as well on World Central Kitchen operations. And this was from March 7th. This is Zomi Francom.
From a hunger point of view, how do you see the situation in Gaza right now?
The situation in Gaza is, as we all know, incredibly bad. It's going to require all of us working together, making efforts as these any way possible to bring meals into Gaza.
And she is, Raf, I think she's from Australia, had a family, a number of children, just one of the seven.
That's right, Andrea. Yeah, Zomi Francom, she was an experienced aid worker. Our colleague Richard Engel speaking to her there on the runway of a Jordanian airbase where she was helping to organize some of those aid drops, food being dropped by parachute into northern Gaza. We have seen just an absolute outpouring of grief at the deaths of all 7 of these aid workers, but especially Zomi Francom. She was very high profile. We are also learning today the identity of the one U.S.-Canadian aid worker. His name was Jacob Flickinger, 33 years old. Andrea.
Well, we grieve for all of them, and and all of their colleagues who've been working all over the world, and in Puerto Rico, during the hurricanes. We've seen them in Ukraine, in conflict zones, coming up with unique ways of delivering food, despite being in war zones and in other natural disasters.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.